The next 3 slides are a quick overview, and I emphasize quick, of the content presented in the article. As I'm sure you'll understand, I won't cover it all in 10 minutes, so I do encourage you to read it. The first part of the article discusses goals and metrics of social media programs, and also calls for the alignment of social media goals with established business objectives. This sounds extremely simple, but in my experience, it isn't very common in most organizations. With the DMA audience in mind, here are some typical business goals that a social media program could support. Your social media program might be focusing on generating leads, such as acquiring email subscribers or business-to-business leads. It could also be supporting the path to purchase for new customers when they're in that discovery phase, as well as getting into customer service. It could be a way for you to retain customers by increasing yield, their purchase frequency, or perhaps their total customer value because of their engagement with your brand online. It could simply be a direct selling tool for products and services. And in many organizations, social media is also being used to support the brand image. On the next slide, I pulled out a chart from the article of the high-level key performance indicators that can be used for social media executive reporting. I'd like to note 2 things about this chart. 1, every single metric is tied to a business goal and highlights specifically how the social media program contributes to it. And 2, the data sources for these metrics are not social media platforms themselves, like Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. If you want to tie social data to business goals, you likely also need to tie it to business data outside of those social platforms. So you'll see me mention a lot of web analytics software, such as Google Analytics or Web Trends, your CRM, and some third-party monitoring and reporting software that would be essential to gather this type of data. So I'm quickly just going to walk through this chart. If your business goal is to generate leads, the executive reporting metric you might want to use is very simple. Leads generated from social media. And you may move on to report that as a percentage of all leads generated. But you're not going to pull that data from Facebook or Twitter. That would come from your web analytics software if you put in the effort to correctly track all of the links that you're putting out online on social platforms, as well as the past customers followed to purchase on your website in that software. You may want to increase sales. Well, then you'll want to report on revenue attributed to social media marketing. Likely, if you're using this for sales, you have an e-commerce portion of your website as well. So that would, again, come out of web analytics like Google Analytics or Web Trends. Another way to talk about increasing sales is to look at your lifetime customer value of socially connected customers and maybe compare that to those that are not socially connected. This is hard, but it really gets down to the meat and potatoes of what you're trying to measure here. So if in your CRM you can identify your customers' social profiles, perhaps because they're using a single sign-on from Facebook or from Twitter to log into their account, you could then tie those socially connected customers directly to sales. You can do the same thing for customer retention by tying that data into your CRM. And finally, if your goal is to support brand image, you probably want to report on things like the volume and sentiment of online branded conversations. My guess is this is the thing that people are most likely to have been doing already, and this is something you'll do through social media monitoring software, for which I think there are no less than 3 dozen choices on the marketplace today. So if you've been struggling to find the social media metrics that resonate with executives, I'd venture to say it might be because you've been looking in the wrong place. Likes, shares, and engagement rate and related metrics are the bread and butter of most social media platforms, but they don't correspond directly to your business goals, nor do they resonate with executives. So the key here is to make the jump from the social data to tie it to business data, and that's going to require some strategic thinking and structure of how you create your social campaigns and how you measure their effects. So on the next slide, I have an overview of a case study that is also presented in the article, and there's 3 parts to this case study. I tried to make the article a mix of here's what you need to know and here's how we did it. So the last half of the article is the case study of the work that we've done at Great Lakes, the federal student loan servicer. We decided in 2012 to start a social media program to engage our customers earlier in the loan life cycle. I was hired to spearhead the effort, and I had the support of a key chief executive and a rockstar team that grew over time. So this case study talks about how we built the program starting in 2012 based on goals relevant to the business, how we've reported those efforts over time. It includes some graphic examples of our reports, description of the evolution of our reports, as well as hints at our future plans for reporting. And then finally talks about how I summed it all up in a 10-minute presentation to the board of directors this last January. I had 10 minutes, 10 data points that tied to the business, and I'm happy to report that the outcome was a senior board member asking, do you have everything you need to be successful? The man was ready to write a check, so I decided that it was mission accomplished. If you want to check out any of our social programs, the links to those are on the bottom of this slide. So I want to wrap this up with a few quick thoughts about the idea of social media measurement and the article as a whole. So on the next slide, I've got these summarized. In my experience, it is not common for organizations to tie their social media program goals to business objectives. So if you are watching this and feeling like you're way behind the ball, please realize that you are among friends that are also trying to work towards this. This does need to change as social media is integrated into more and more aspects of our business, not just marketing, and we need to think of it as one more channel or tool we're using to accomplish business objectives. If you're working to explain the outcomes of your social media program in your organization, you must have buy-in of the key chief executive, and that executive needs to have an understanding of your metrics and how they tie to social. For the first 18 months that I worked at Great Lakes, I had a regular quarterly meeting with our Chief Marketing and Sales Officer where I walked through point by point all the data we were collecting from the program, what it meant, how it maybe changed over time as platforms evolved, and how that tied to our business. So if he was stopped in the hall, he could be my advocate with other executives. And then finally, as a quick resource, you will see this book noted in the references of my article. But if you haven't read Social Media ROI yet, I highly recommend you go buy it today. This was written by Olivier Blanchard, I want to say back in about 2010. It still resonates today. It is a timeless and useful resource for anyone trying to tie social media to business objectives and report on their performance.